So I want to pivot a little bit and talk about, cancel culture, because you wrote a great piece about it in Jacobin. In researching for my own segment on this, I came across that piece and I wanted to share a few excerpts because I think there's a common misconception about who cancel culture negatively impacts. There's this idea that it's only people in positions of power who are complaining about it, and they're just worried about dealing with some criticism. But there are real consequences for people based on valid political speech. So you give these two examples. In 2014, the University of Illinois withdrew an offer of employment to English professor Stephen Saleta after some faculty, students, and donors asserted that his tweets critical of Benjamin Netanyahu's administration during the Gaza war were anti-Semitic. Due to the controversy, he's been driven out of academic employment and now works as a bus driver. Also, political scientist Norman Finkelstein, another critic of the Israeli occupation, was denied tenure at DePaul University in 2007 after a successful campaign by the Anti-Defamation League and lawyer Alan Dershowitz. He likewise it's amazing. He likewise has difficulty finding employment and says he struggles to pay the rent. And so, this idea that, the only people complaining about cancel culture are these people who have power, they have money, they have these giant platforms, and they don't really suffer any consequences of what they're complaining about. But, first of all, I think a lot of that is they inflate the power of these people to begin with. But there are private citizens and there are academics who have been ousted from their jobs, from their careers, because everything has become, I guess, worthy of cancellation. And I wanted you to kind of expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's turkeys voting for Christmas when the left supports cancel culture, when the left sneers at conceptions of free speech as free speech, when it abandons other civil liberties norms like due process and presumption of innocence. The minute that we give up on this stuff, it will be used absolutely by the right against us. And the two examples there of Stephen Saleta and Norman Finkelstein are sort of clear examples. In the province of Ontario in Canada, there have been multiple efforts by the provincial government to try to ban Palestine solidarity activities from university and college campuses. And Canada actually doesn't have strong free speech protections in the way that the United States does, just because of historical reasons. And so the grounds that the politicians are using to try to ban this from campus is that it's hate speech. And of course, this is being whipped up by the sort of the worst apologists for the Netanyahu regime in Israel. But why is a science journalist writing suddenly about cancel culture and free speech? The reason that I come to this issue, one is because as a journalist, I'm always very interested in defending the right of speech, but mainly because I write a lot about climate change and energy systems, and throughout the 2000s, when I was just getting started with my career, you saw in the United States under George W. Bush, he was muzzling climate scientists and conservation biologists. The government of Canada under a Tory government, a conservative government of Stephen Harper, was doing the same thing, muzzling climate scientists, as was Tony Abbott, the conservative prime minister of Australia. So for me, it was just so obvious that the left has to fight for free speech, because the minute that we abandon this, the right will use the rationale that we have, or the liberal left that has abandoned free speech, to turn that against us.
And why do you think that why do you think the left has been so enthusiastic to adopt all this? What do you think is going on there? Why have the turkeys voted for Christmas, so to speak, on the left?
I mean, there's a lot of things that have gone into this, but I think, and this comes back to a lot of the discussions that we're having on the left at the moment around it's an ill-defined term, and I accept that it's problematic, but basically the professional managerial class, or PMC. I feel that in the 1970s and 1980s, when the neoliberal regimes of Margaret Thatcher, Ronald Reagan, and so on and so forth around the world were historically victorious in breaking the power of the trade unions and the working class. The left began to sort of be partially separate from the working class, whereas previously, while it wasn't necessarily synonymous, there were always people who had been sort of middle class or upper class, who were class traders and sided with the working class, and there were some workers who were who voted Tory, who voted Republican. Nevertheless, broadly, you could say the left and the working class were more or less the same thing. Since the victory of neoliberalism and breaking the power of the working class and trade unions, these two things have separated. And there's a series of pathologies that I think operate within a sort of a left that is entirely built out of the middle class, around some of the things what Anna was just talking about, and you were talking about, Nando, with respect to the careerism, and the sort of pushing people down. And whereas the social weight of the trade unions, the social weight of the working class, when they come up against these sort of pathologies, they just say, "Don't be ridiculous. This is absurd. We know that every day at work, the bosses try to shut us down. If we speak out, we intrinsically get the importance of free speech." And I think that's fundamentally the problem. And I don't think things are really going to change until the working class begins to move for itself again.
Well, yeah, that's about as good a historiography of it, I guess, would be the right way.
Nando,
Mike always talked about historicizing things and not naturalizing things, and that was about as good as answers I could have hoped for.
Nando, I actually want to ask one more question about
this,
because I really want to think about how we can strategically combat this culture, right? And it's, I'm going to keep it real. I mean, it's difficult to do as someone who looks the way I do, right? And so it's very easy for people to just minimize what I'm trying to say or dismiss what I'm trying to say by putting me in a category of privilege and all of this. But what I'm trying to communicate, and I think what Michael was really trying to communicate before he passed, was if we really want to accomplish some of these lofty goals in this country or throughout the world, we need to be willing to appeal to a broader group of people and just be welcoming, and not present ourselves as individuals who are going to turn our backs on anyone for any past mistake, whether it's big or small. And so how do we communicate that in a way that doesn't just automatically get dismissed based on the way we look?
That's a question, isn't it? I don't know. I think we are going to see things change a little bit. I mean, just the discussion you guys have just had. I think a lot of people around Jacobin, more people are beginning to speak up. And I think part of it comes down to just confidence. So many people have written me emails or DMs saying, I totally agree with what you're saying, but I'm afraid to say it. And the more that we speak out against this, the more people have the confidence that they're not alone in this. So these kinds of conversations are utterly essential.
Well, Leigh, thank you so much for joining us. This was absolutely fascinating. Again, I highly recommend Leigh's writing, recommend his books. Like that confidence that Leigh was just talking about, he has it in spades because he's done the work and he's been around. He didn't just join this kind of thing in the last 2 seconds. So he's got some context. So Leigh, thank you so much for joining us. This was wonderful.
All right. Take care, guys.